Okay, forgive me for the terrible comparison here, but have you ever seen the movie Sophie's Choice? You know, the movie where Meryl Streep has to decide which one of her children is forced to die. This is sort of like Johnny's Choice, and I know it's such a bad comparison, but I just kind of felt like I wanted to say it because the title, the thumbnail, Johnny Gaudreau is choice, you know, etc., right? But like, this is Johnny's Choice we're talking about here. Johnny Gaudreau, Calgary Flames, and the contract negotiations that have been going on the past few weeks and months probably here. We're going over some updates that we have from NHL insiders and what they have to say about the whole situation, because Johnny Gaudreau is one of the best hockey players in the entire gosh darn world, and I don't think there's anybody that's going to go out there and disagree with that sentiment anytime soon. Gaudreau is 28 years old, 5'9", 165 pounds as a left-handed forward. He needs a new contract, but he is a guy that is so extraordinarily good that the contract amount, I mean, you could debate whether or not it's the money, it's the location, it's Calgary itself that's the problem here. Gaudreau came off a 115-point year in 82 games played. 40 goals, 75 assists. This season comes just a few years removed after he had 99 points in 82 games played. It's really crazy, actually, seeing how he bounced back, because after that 99-point season, he only had 58 points in 70 games in 2019-20. He followed it up by another sub-point-per-game year in 2020-2021, so seeing the bounce back this year definitely was great to see. He had over a point per game in the postseason as well, and it's kind of funny because even though he scored 14 points in 12 games, you could debate that Johnny Gaudreau was not as good as he needed to be in that playoff run. Kind of funny in my opinion. But either way, Johnny Gaudreau does need a new contract, and Johnny Gaudreau has also been the subject of many conversations from other teams' fan bases as a potential free agent. He was born in New Jersey, but he grew up cheering for the Flyers, so you have two fan bases in the Devils and Philly that also are talking about this guy as a potential fit should he go to free agency. But, of course, the ones that are more and more intrigued in this conversation than anybody are those Calgary Flames fans themselves. We have ourselves some comments from Friedman as well as from Pierre LeBrun that, I mean, they could make or break your enthusiasm towards the contract, but I don't know, I'll just let the quotes do the talking over here. This is what Friedman said on the most recent edition of the Jeff Merrick Show. It's a pretty good piece of news, all things considered. He says the offer for Gaudreau is significant from Calgary. He doesn't think other teams will match it financially. Ultimately, it comes down to what Johnny Gaudreau wants himself. Now, I do think part of this has to do with the 8-year contract that you're allowed to give as a rights holder, or the initial draft rights holder of a player. When you go to free agency, you're not allowed to sign an 8-year contract anymore, but the Flames do have the option to give that to Gaudreau at the moment. It's just if there is no contract handed out by the time the free agency period opens, then okay, all of a sudden Calgary is bounded by the same 7-year limit as well. Also, you would have to imagine that the Flames understand that Johnny Gaudreau is the best player this team has ever had? I mean, look at the stat from Evolving Hockey posted earlier yesterday as well. Johnny Gaudreau's 111 adjusted points during the 21-22 season were the most in a single season in Flames history. He also had a historic year for Calgary, becoming the franchise's first 100-point scorer since 1993. He is arguably, if not definitively, the best Flame of all time. So whatever amount of money the Flames are throwing at this guy, you can bet your behind it's going to be a pretty high dollar amount. So when Friedman says that, yeah, I don't really know if any other team is going to go out there and match it financially, all it really matters is whether or not Johnny wants that amount of money and he wants to stick around, I believe him. Now, you go over onto what Pierre LeBrun said also yesterday, so where Friedman made his comments on the Jeff Merrick Show, you also have LeBrun who said in Insider Trading that Johnny Gaudreau's decision remains undecided on the Flames' offer, and his camp have not communicated to the Flames what they plan to do. LeBrun goes on to say this does not bode well for Calgary. Now, I will say this as well. If Johnny Gaudreau goes out there and he says, yeah, okay, that's a good contract, I like it, why would he have not accepted it yet? I'm recording this video and this audio on June 30th, 6:45 p.m. here, PST. So, at the moment, there is no Johnny Gaudreau contract extension. If by the time this video goes up, we'll see if he actually does resign and he does stick around. But if he doesn't, then it kind of makes things a little bit more difficult to stomach, doesn't it? Because if the Flames have already put their max offer out there on the table and Johnny Gaudreau still did not say yes, It says a lot more about what he wants, more so than the amount of money it is that they're giving him, right? Especially if the dollar amount and let's say the contract, let's say it's 8 years long because they have the option to do that, is of that magnitude where no other team could potentially match it. And so for Johnny Gaudreau, his choice pretty much comes down to, does he want to stick around in Calgary and get paid the most amount of money he could get, or does he want to go somewhere else, probably to a different team, probably to a hometown team, or to another squad that also can probably be pretty good? Because I mean, the Calgary Flames were a great team this season. I had them winning the Cup in my Stanley Cup bracket. It's just, if you lose out on one of Gaudreau and or Tkachuk, it's going to be really tough to see where this team goes in 22-23. Obviously, they have some talented players still on their roster, but where do you go from here? Especially when you lose out on a 100-point scorer like both Tkachuk and Gaudreau have been this season. So, for Calgary, it really does boil down to personal preference from Johnny. It also boils down to what he values more, the money, the loyalty, or just his own heart's desire. You don't usually see players in the NHL go the NBA route, where they just go from team to team to team, cycling through, going to big-name markets with big money contracts and just playing a year or two out there. The NHL doesn't usually have that, and so when you have a situation like Taylor Hall, for example, a few years ago, or Johnny Gaudreau today, where this seems like somewhat of an option, it becomes a lot more intriguing when you think about where this team is going to go next. I just would hate to be a Calgary Flames fan right now thinking about Johnny Gaudreau and Tkachuk and saying, man, one of these guys might go. We might lose out on one of these guys and it might cause us to overpay the other guy because, let's face it, if Johnny Gaudreau does not re-sign with Calgary, you have to use the money that you free up from not re-signing Gaudreau and give it to Tkachuk to guarantee that that guy stays around here too. There might be some form of an overpayment or a compensation here that can go to either one of these players because you bet your behind you are not losing out on both Gaudreau and Tkachuk in the same offseason. That would be absolutely disastrous material right there, and we all know the Flames are probably going to not want to do that. So, talk to me in the comments on your thoughts about Johnny Gaudreau and his choice right here. Whether or not you feel he is going to sign in Calgary, like if you had to place a bet, where do you think he goes? Does he go back home to New Jersey where he was born, or does he go to Philadelphia where he cheered for when he grew up? You would have to think that there's some sort of emphasis placed on team success, right? So those two options would be pretty big setbacks from where the Calgary Flames were this previous season. Obviously, New Jersey is supposed to get better. We all know that that team has the capability of improving immediately in the short term, especially when you consider what they can do with that second overall pick. But Philadelphia, I mean, they just got John Tortorella in there. They still have a pretty weak team, and a team that is recovering from injuries as well, so who knows, maybe they could be a wild card in the mix as well. Maybe not like a wild card team per se, but a wild card as in they could come out of nowhere and actually make somewhat of an impact. I don't know what I'm talking about here. There are many directions you can go down with this conversation when you acknowledge that the Calgary Flames probably have already iced their best offer available, and Gaudreau himself has not yet signed it, so I don't know. Does that mean that you should think, okay, if he hasn't signed it now, is he ever going to sign it? Is he really going to sign a contract in a few days after sitting on it for a while? Like, I mean, if his initial instinct was to kind of hold it off, that probably means he doesn't like it, right? So, I don't know, we'll see what happens, but talk to me in the comments either way about Johnny Gaudreau and this entire Calgary Flames situation. I hope you enjoyed this GAUDREAU'S 99, and bye.